Hey guys, this is Tauna. Today we're going to be talking about which OTJ commander decks I think you guys should be picking up. I think, which ones you should avoid. Just giving you guys some thoughts about them and everything like that. I've, deep dived into them to make sure that I understand them all and, see how they play and all that kind of stuff to try and give you guys the best advice possible, because we want to make sure that, if you're investing in one of these decks, you want to make sure that it's good. You want to make sure that, you're getting a decent kind of, value from it and everything like that. Want to make sure that you guys are happy with the decks as well, obviously. So we've got the 4 different decks. So we've got the Quick Draw, Stella Lee, we've got Most Wanted with Olivia, the Desert Bloom with Yuma, and then we've got Grand Larceny with Gontai. So I'm going to talk about each of them. First of all, I'm going to talk about, the point of the deck and everything like that. I'm going to talk about overall, what I think of the deck, as well as, just giving you guys which one I think is going to be the strongest and which one I think is going to be, the weakest, which one, with upgrades and stuff like that, it's going to be the most fun. Because, just because something's strong doesn't mean it's fun. Just because something's fun doesn't mean that it's weak. So I just want to make sure that, you guys understand all that kind of stuff. But before we get into it, make sure you head on down and just subscribe. That's the easiest way to just support the channel. We are aiming to hit 2,000 subscribers as fast as possible. If I can get to 2,000 subscribers by the end of April, that would be amazing. I know that that is an insane amount to ask, 600 new people. But when you think about it, our last video had something like 19,000 views or something like that on the Fallout Commander deck. So even if, 10% of the people that subscribe, then we will be able to hit that. All right. So the first one here we're going to be talking about is Stella Lee. Now, the point of this deck is mostly built around playing a whole bunch of turns on each, a whole bunch of spells on each turn. You want to make sure that you're playing as many spells on the turn. Stella enables that, making it so that whenever you cast your second spell, each turn you get to exile the top card of your library, and then you can play that until the end of your next turn, which is nice. Not the end of this turn, the end of your next turn. And then you can also tap her to copy a target instant or sorcery, and you may choose new targets for it. Now, I don't personally think that she is the best option for the commander here. Personally, I like, where is he? I think he's just going to be under creatures over here. Eris, Roar of the Storm. Personally, he's the secondary commander, and I love him. He costs 2 less for each different mana value for instants and sorceries in your graveyard. He's got flying, prowess, and then whenever you cast your second spell per turn, you get to create a red dragon. Now, personally, I think he's best, but this deck is basically built around just, as I said, playing as many spells as possible per turn, while casting as many spells per turn. And then you've got a whole bunch of different ways to copy them in various different ways, as well as a whole bunch of card advantage as well. There is, as you can see, there's a lot of draw cards in here, which we'll talk about in a bit. Potentially, if you guys are interested, I might do an upgrade deck, like an upgrade for it, but we'll see. So yeah, mostly built around kind of playing a whole bunch of cards per turn and then making value from that. We've got Most Wanted. So this is built around Outlaws as the primary focus here, with a secondary focus on treasures. So as similar to the Quick Draw one, I do think that the secondary commander here is better, which is going to be Vihan Goldwaker, or at least is more interesting. He gives all Outlaws vigilance and haste in the command zone, keep in mind. And then he's also going to animate all your treasures on turn to become 3/3 construct assassins, which is really, really interesting. As well as the fact that because they're assassins, they become vigilance and haste. I don't think that Olivia is awful or anything like that, but I do think that, personally I like the secondary commander more. But yeah, as I said, a whole bunch of stuff around like treasures, and a whole bunch of stuff around Outlaws, so various different Outlaws. We've got Desert Bloom, built around sacking or at least getting your deserts into the graveyard, and then from there you create a whole bunch of plant tokens, so you're going wide a fair bit there. A bunch of recursion, or at least some recursion in here, to be able to bring those the lands back to the battlefield and everything like that. So making sure that you're able to bring your lands back, being able to do stuff from there, be able to create a whole bunch of, you know, plant tokens or desert tokens, just various different options from that. And then finally, we've got the Grand Larceny one here, which is built around combat damage. I actually really love this, and I do like the secondary commander for this deck. I don't think that he necessarily is the best commander for the deck. I think that the others are a better option. Like, I think that Gontai himself is a better option here to give you more casts and stuff, and to be able to enable, like, you know, he just goes well with the rest of the deck. But I do think the secondary commander, it very much kind of works well here. The secondary commander for Desert Bloom is going to be one of the first things that I cut from this deck, probably. I don't particularly like Kiri. I think that Kiri works better with, like, you know, plants and tree folk, which isn't really this deck. You know, you're going to create plants, and you've got plants and you've got tree folk and stuff. Actually, I don't think of the tree folk. No, they're just plants. But I don't think that, you know, Kiri particularly works well there. So yeah, just kind of like stealing stuff away from everyone and kind of, you know, playing other people's decks. So I'm going to talk, you know, I'm going to review each of them now as well. So the first one here is Stella Lee. There is a lot of draw cards in this that don't necessarily do other stuff, like besides costing a little bit. So something like Radical Idea, just draw Jumpstart, draw Flashback, draw, and then more Flashback. We've got draw, scry, draw 2 cards. As I said, there is a lot of cards in here that are just draw, draw, draw. Which isn't necessarily bad. It's going to give you the option of having, like, you know, a lot of different cards in here, as well as the fact that, you know, the cards are relatively cheap. Stuff like Serum Visions here, draw a card and then scry 2. Only costs 1, so, you know, you don't have to worry too much about that. But, you know, there's, looking at this, the 18 different cards that are draw in here, which is fine, except for the fact that, you know, you're then going to be copying them, or using them first to then enable you to be able to play some of the other stuff. So you got, you know, some big removal in here to deal some damage, fling some stuff around. There's a lot of things in here around creating some tokens. So Tellarand, Young Pyromancer, Murmuring Mystic, Third Path Iconoclast, and Shark Typhoon, all going to be able to create you, you know, different tokens based on whatever you're casting. Most of them, like, you know, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, create something. So, you know, you're going to be able to cast a whole bunch of stuff there. Now, unfortunately, these are all casts, so you're not going to get them on the copies, but yeah. Octavia is a very, very nice card in this, though. You get to create, like, turn these things here into 8/8, 8/8. What are they? Oh no, they just become toughness 8/8. So overall, you know, the Stella Lee deck works decently. As I said, there's a lot of draw stuff in here with less kind of, you know, there's some damage stuff over here. Volcanic Torrent. You know, you've got some kind of removal stuff in there as well. You've got Electrostatic Field and then Gutter Snipe to kind of work on any of those cards that you are casting. Veyran is a very nice card in here. Arcane Bombardment. Like, you know, there's some nice cards in here. And, you know, there's some Storm stuff as well. This is a good kind of, if you're building an Izzet deck, this is a good kind of starting kind of, a starter pack, essentially, like a starter pack there. Most Wanted is a very it's a very broad deck because it's essentially Olivia plus whatever assassins, mercs, pirates, rogues, and warlocks they wanted to add into here. Some of them are going to do stuff with treasures. Not a lot of them are going to do stuff with treasures. And, like, you know, you've got Brina here who does +1/+1s and you know, draw a card and stuff like that. Kind of, you know, encourages people to attack other stuff. Mary, who does hit squad stuff. Like, you know, there's a lot of stuff in here. It's very broad. It feels like just Mardu good stuff focused around Outlaws, which I guess isn't a bad thing. Like, it's not a bad thing, but, you know, stuff like, you know, there's stuff in here to do with when you've gained life and stuff like that. You know, there's just like, it's just a very, very broad deck that felt like they just kind of went through and they were just like, this is a good card. This is a good card, right? Let's add Academy Manufacturer in here, right? We're going to create some treasures. Why not? With some simple kind of upgrades and more focus around the treasury kind of stuff, I think that this could be an amazing deck. Don't get me wrong. Like this, if they wanted to completely break this deck and sell it so much, they could have put like Dockside or Ragavan or something like that in there. Well, Dockside probably in there, and people would have bought this so much. And Dockside would go incredibly hard in this deck. But yeah, I personally think, you know, this is just kind of like Mardu good stuff in here. The Desert Bloom one is a little bit more focused, but it is missing a lot of stuff that would be amazing in here. Stuff specifically around kind of getting more of the lands from your graveyard back into your hand, like back into the battlefield. So something like Undergrowth Recon here at the beginning of your upkeep, return target land from the graveyard to the battlefield tapped, would be really, really great. However, they don't really focus on that. More it's, hey, you can play lands from your graveyard. However, a lot of the lands are also tap lands. Deserts are notoriously not amazing. They're decent, don't get me wrong, but like they're not amazing lands, and they've kind of, you know, gone and added in some of the newer ones, which, you know, are great in regards to kind of mana fixing and having, like, you know, 2 colors and stuff like that and committing a crime, but they also just still enter tapped. It is, it's another one that's like, you know, with some rejigging and stuff like that, something that makes your lands enter untapped or something like that, or lands enter untapped. What am I thinking of here? Spelunking, for example. With something like Spelunking, so lands you control enter the battlefield untapped, all of a sudden that's just a whole lot better, right? And they do have something in there, which is, where is it? It's a new creature. What's creatures here? Dune Chanter. Dune Chanter makes it so that lands you control and lands you own that aren't in the battlefield are deserts. So that one there is, you know, it kind of helps it where, you know, changes all these other ones into deserts, which is great, and they enter, you know, untapped and stuff, but still, like, you know, you've got some issues there where, you know, you're just going to have a whole bunch of tapped lands kind of come in. That doesn't necessarily mean it's weak, because you can flood the board with so many kind of creature tokens with it from various different sections, which is really great and really interesting. And as I said, like, you know, you're going to have a whole bunch of plant tokens that you can then buff up with other stuff. And then finally, we've got Grand Larceny, which is very interestingly focused. I thought it was mostly going to be focused around the kind of stealing aspects, and it kind of is, but it's like 2 themes are sitting there. The stealing aspect, which is really nice and really interesting, and then the deal combat damage aspect. So a lot of these things, like there's cards in here, for example, like let's say Cold-Eyed Selkie here. Cold-Eyed Selkie is just whenever you deal combat damage, you may draw that many cards, and has Island Walk to enable her to be able to kind of, you know, get through the enemy's defenses. So there's a lot of stuff in here that's like, you know, unblockable, or, you know, has fear, or whenever you deal combat damage, do this and stuff like that, which is very, very interesting, or can't be blocked. Like, you know, there's 3 different cards in here that can't be blocked, or 4 different that can't be blocked. So there's a lot of cards in there that are built around kind of can't be blocked. Theft is almost a secondary like focus of the deck, right? Like theft is almost a secondary focus of the deck. I wouldn't say it is entirely, because, you know, the commander does it. There is a fair few cards that do it and stuff like that. But primarily, the main way for you to thieve things and steal things away is going to be deal damage to your opponents. Deal combat damage, right? It has to be specific combat damage. It's not when you attack, it's when you actually deal combat damage to an opponent, which is really interesting, right? I love that idea. Actually, this deck is incredibly cool. I am currently building a deck around the secondary commander, Felix 5 Boots, that's built around, you know, combat triggers, combat damage triggers, because a combat damage trigger doubler in this is really, really interesting. So in regards to which ones I think you should buy, All right. I personally think the most focused one is the Grand Larceny. Grand Larceny overall is very focused. You could easily replace some of the cards. You could either change it to be more focused around unblockable stuff. And, you know, there's a whole bunch of cards in there that you could add in. Something like Kadama of the West side. Kadama of the West Tree? Yeah, Kadama of the West Tree, isn't it? This one here, making it so that whenever you deal combat damage, whenever a modified creature deals combat damage, you get, you know, ramp up. That's a very interesting card to kind of add in here. There's a lot of interesting cards you could add in here, but we're not kind of talking about that. I want to focus on the actual decks as they are currently. And I think that Grand Larceny is honestly up there as one of the stronger ones, but the major issue that you run into is people do not want you to play. People do not want to take combat damage. People do not want you to, you know, cast your spells and stuff. People don't want you to steal their stuff away. So while Grand Larceny, I think, is one of the strongest ones, it's also the one that's going to get you targeted the most. So I don't know if that makes sense. Most Wanted, I would say, is going to be... I'm going to say Most Wanted is the second most powerful. Actually, no, I think Most Wanted is the most powerful. Most Wanted is the most powerful, but that's because they put Mardu good stuff. It's just whatever good assassins, mercs, pirates, rogues, warlocks existed. They added some treasure stuff, a little bit of treasure stuff in there, but mostly it's just, let's add some rogues, let's add some warlocks, let's add, you know, this person's a rogue, this person's a, you know, an assassin. They're in here, right? Even to the point that there's just changelings, right? Which is fine. But there's no kind of, you know, huge kind of treasure focus, in my opinion. I think that, you know, a treasure focus would have been nicer, but it is going to be, in my opinion, the strongest of all of them. But it is also probably the most boring of all of them because of the fact that it is the least focused. It's just focused around having good stuff, right? I'd say the second most powerful is going to be Desert Bloom. Actually, and kind of draw with Grand Larceny, right? So Desert Bloom can flood the board with so many tokens. The major issue is, you know, your lands all enter kind of tapped and stuff like that. So with some stuff to make it so that they're untapped, that would be nice. But either way, you've got Yuma, you've got, you know, if you don't want to run Yuna, run Hazenzon, who's probably going to be potentially better. Because while Yuma allows you to be able to, you know, sack your lands and stuff like that whenever you attack, and then that's going to create a 4/2 green plant in the basic deck. You're not going to be able to, you know, get them out as much and stuff. You're not going to be able to do some huge stuff with that. There is, as I said, some recursion in here. Where's recursion? Like, there is some recursion in here, play lands from graveyard, etc., etc. You know, Sun Titan here, a mana value of 3 or less. You can return your lands with that. You know, you can return your lands with some of this stuff. But, you know, I just think that Hazezon, I'm probably butchering that. Shaper of the Sand is a bit stronger here, but Yuma as well. Like, you're going to be able to get a lot of these things into the graveyard through various different things. I also would have thought it would be more interesting if it was mostly focused around, and people are going to hate that I say this, land destruction. Destroy everyone's lands, and then you get to bring your lands back, but no one else can. That, to me, would be very interesting. But again, people would kind of hate that. So, personally, I think Desert Bloom is going to be the second strongest, almost drawn with Grand Larceny. Desert Bloom, as I said, like, you know, the major issue is the tapped lands, and, you know, you're also, you know, like, you're mostly getting things back when, you know, for example, even Sun Titan, you'd be better off bringing back a permanent, like, you know, creature or something like that, which would be more fun than, you know, having to bring back your lands with it. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong there. And then the last one here is Quick Draw, which I think personally is, okay, so I'll do like a final summary at the end. Quick Draw, you know, has has the makings of a decent deck, but because of the fact that there is just so much draw in here, while not so much damage in here, you're using your instants and sorceries to more create tokens and buff up some stuff rather than using your instants and sorceries to be able to deal damage. There are so many different token stuff in here. You know, primarily you want to be casting more than one thing per turn, so that way you get off, you know, say Eris's proc, which I think is, as I said, I think that Eris is the better face commander. Flying, prowess, create red dragons. But, you know, you're not kind of, you know, spell slinging so much as getting value from your spells and stuff. It as I said, very good makings for a deck, but kind of missing that kind of wow factor. All right, so if I'm talking about the strongest, as I said, I think that Most Wanted is the strongest, followed by Desert Bloom and Grand Larceny, very close together, with Desert Bloom just inching out and Quick Draw being the weakest potentially. In regards to the most interesting, I would say Grand Larceny, and then Quick Draw I think is the most interesting, has the most interesting cards. Once you kind of upgrade and remove some of this draw stuff, in my opinion, you still want draw stuff, like don't butcher all of it or something like that. And if it's draw plus something else, for example, then it's going to be good. But you know, I just don't think you need that much draw in one deck. So yeah, I think that Grand Larceny and Quick Draw are most interesting. Desert Bloom's pretty interesting, but as I said, like it's kind of missing that kind of wow factor as well, like stuff to kind of, you know, to completely kind of change the board kind of thing. You're going to be creating a whole bunch of tokens and stuff like that and then swinging them out. Kyrie is a very interesting commander, which could be interesting, and she's going to provide work here, but I don't think that she is going to provide enough that it's going to be kind of game changing to potentially have her as the kind of primary commander there. So, and then Most Wanted I think is the most boring, but Most Wanted is mostly the most boring because of the choices that they chose. If you went, like, if you switched it over to having Vihan Goldwaker and then slowly change some of the stuff out that's going to be able to create some more treasures and stuff like that. So you, like, you know, creating a whole bunch of treasures and then you're swinging your treasures at people and stuff, which would be very, very funny. And then, you know, you can do whatever you want with them and do some very interesting stuff, then, you know, I think that would be more interesting. But as it is currently, this is just a, let's just group a whole bunch of cards that are decent together. But yeah, that's my opinion. Anyway, I hope you guys had a wonderful day. Make sure you do subscribe. I hope you guys, okay, I gave a quick summary. Have a great day and goodbye.